Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? The way the back as well? Yeah. Firstly, it's great to be here. Thank you, John and Scott, for hosting. It's so good to see so many growth folks in the room. I'm excited about our talk today. I'm going to get right into it. So I'm the engineering manager for the growth acquisition team at Lyft. Pat and I will be talking today. Pat's my counterpart on the product side. He'll be taking the slides over midway through. And I'll be talking about our marketing automation platform that we built at Lyft over the last year. We call it Symphony because it's an orchestration of all of our marketing campaigns. We just recently put a blog post out, and a lot of the content here is from the blog post. I highly recommend that you try to read that as well. So I'll start with our sort of mission statement. Our mission is to, so trying to see which slide are we on. Okay, let's start with our mission statement. The mission at Lyft is to improve people's lives with the world's best transportation, and you'll see that with our recent efforts. We recently purchased a company called Motivate, becoming the largest bicycle operator in the world. We now show transit and rentals in some of our regions. We also are 100% sort of, every ride is 100% carbon neutral, meaning that we buy carbon offsets to make sure every ride is carbon neutral, and we're really committed to this mission statement. As part of the growth acquisition team, we are at the forefront where we bring this awareness about our offerings to all the customers, both on the rider side and the driver side. And I'll talk about our platform and how we've automated this so far. Today's agenda, I'll just quickly talk about two numbers: where is Lyft today? Then I'll talk about some of the challenges that we saw on the growth side, specifically on the growth acquisition side, and we'll talk about our marketing automation solution. And again, this is very unique to a two-way marketplace like Lyft, where we have supply, we have demand, that is very regional, and how do we sort of deal with that in this ever-changing marketplace? So Lyft today. These are numbers from Q1 earnings, so I have been approved to share these numbers, so that's great. The numbers, we've grown from about 14 million in Q1 of 2018 to about 20 million riders in 2019. Our average revenue per rider has gone up as well. We've gone from about, see, again, I'm a little lost in the slides. It's gone up from about $29 per rider to about $38 per rider. And this is, again, because we've tried to increase ride frequency, we've tried to increase rider engagement, we've increased our offerings from moving from Share to Lux to Excel to bikes and scooters. So you know, you think of Lyft as the first app to open when you think about transit. This has led to a lot of growth in rides as well. So what does that mean? We're currently doing about 50 million plus rides in any given month. It varies basically on seasonality. There are definitely some peaks like St. Paddy's Day, Thanksgiving, which are like peaks for us, but we do an average about 50 million rides a month. And one of the key reasons for our growth has been our very regionalized growth strategy. So it's very important to think about that. Lyft currently operates in about 700 regions across the United States. Regions to us are just think about them as cities or small zip codes. And we have different supply and demand needs in each region. For example, in Boston, we might need more drivers in a given month, but in Los Angeles, we might actually need more riders in that same month. And if you're a marketing person that needs to look at marketplace balance and make decisions, it can become quite cumbersome because the marketplace is always changing. You must have run across one of our ads. The ad on the left is an ad a driver might see. It's one of our driving pay packages. You know, you're guaranteed X amount of money if you do X rides in sort of Z days, right? And on the right side, you'll see a normal rider ad. It's more, it's again incentive-based, where we try to get you to take that first ride with a coupon, with some percentage off, because we want you to at least try out our platform. And then there are other levers once you're into the platform where we can keep you engaged, where we can make sure we try to understand your motivations. The growth acquisition team spends millions of dollars a year putting these ads in front of you guys. We use multiple different platforms: Facebook, Google, Twitter, YouTube, job boards platforms, our own internal platform, referrals. Now that we've gained some economies of scale, we can actually use word of mouth and use our own customer base to refer us other drivers, refer us other riders. And a lot of these decisions, going back to running regional campaigns, what we realized was that marketers are spending a whole deal of time actually understanding the results of their campaigns, trying to monitor how their campaigns were doing, and then sort of execute these changes. So go into these platforms, make bid changes, budget changes, creative changes, text changes. And as you can understand, this can be a very cumbersome process. And it also can lead to suboptimal decisions, because if you're running campaigns in all of these regions, sometimes it's hard to share a learning from one region and copy it over to another, especially if you're doing all of this manually. So I joined Lyft about a year ago. I come from a background of growth engineering, built marketing automation platforms before, and I understood what Lyft was doing, but at a whole nother scale. And we were like, okay, we need to automate some of these tasks. And that's why we sort of ventured on this journey to build this platform. So we built Symphony. And what is Symphony? So Symphony, we think of Symphony's mission, it's a platform to help marketers deliver the right message at the right time to potential drivers and riders to maximize cost efficiency. That's what Symphony is at Lyft. And what you will see down below is a simple representation of a funnel at Lyft. The top part of the funnel is what it looks like for a driver. As you can see, there are several more steps in the funnel. And the bottom part is what a funnel looks like for a rider. And you will see on the left all of the different sources that the users might come from. They might come from email, from search, from social, from job boards, or even organic. And currently, Symphony focuses on the acquire part of the funnel. So we try to optimize all of our marketing efforts around acquisition. But our vision with Symphony is to help manage all of the marketing messaging all the way up to early life cycle. It could be an arbitrary point, it could be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, but to some point where it's early life cycle for a user, and that incentivizes the acquisition team as well, not just to bring leads and activations to the platform, but to bring high quality leads and activations to the platform, right? And that's the sort of mindset that we're moving towards. Give you a second to sort of go over these slides. Good slide. And that's why we built Symphony, and this is the 3-piece architecture of Symphony. We'll go over this architecture in detail in today's presentation, and I'm happy to sort of take questions after the talk as well. So the 3 key parts of the Symphony architecture are our LTV forecaster, our budget allocator, and third are our bidders, the bidders that actually interact with the internal and external channels to place the final bid, budget, or creative that needs to go out. And underlying all of this is a very sort of sophisticated marketing data and attribution platform where we capture a lot of the data, the spend data, the click data, to some extent some of the impression data as well that we get from various different channels. So that powers the Symphony architecture. So I'll first talk a little bit more in detail about the LTV forecaster. And when we put this blog out as well, this is the portion that received the maximum amount of questions. If you're a startup, even if you're a mature company, one of the first things you want to understand is you want to understand who are your valuable users, who are your expensive users, and you want to know that as soon as possible. And that's why you want a forecasting model that can help you predict that. And that's where we invested our first efforts as well. So yeah, let's go into that. LTV for different businesses might be calculated differently. For us, I've tried to give a simple representation of the formula looks like. It's our projected net revenue into, say, projected lifetime rides into a driver or rider split. And depending on that driver or rider split, we decide how much of that LTV contribution goes to driver, how much of that LTV contribution goes to rider. And as you can imagine, because we're a two-way marketplace, that formula, that last factor, keeps changing depending on market, keeps changing depending on time of the day of the week. And we've gotten more sophisticated with our contracts with our business team on how we provide them some information, and they give us back a factor that we should be applying into our lifetime value model. So there are multiple teams here that are at play. Pat, who will take over the presentation a little later, will talk a little bit more about our contract with our business targets team. And to build our lifetime value model, again, this is from a perspective of the growth acquisition team. So folks who here are on the growth acquisition team, we're specifically trying to predict the lifetime value of a user based on very, very early features and early behavior of a user. So how do they behave in their first 7 days, first 10 days? And then how can we predict what their likelihood to stay with the platform is 6 months from now, 8 months from now, maybe a year from now. So we project up to 2 years, but obviously our accuracy decreases as we look further out. We have higher confidence up to 6 months, but then that confidence decreases as we project further out. And we focus specifically on new user rider LTV and new user driver LTV. We take hundreds of features that come from device information, from sign-up information, from channels that we work with, volunteered information that riders and drivers give into the app. And looking at historical trends, we are able to predict with good number of certainty, is this person likely to activate? And how many rides is this person likely to take, looking up to 6 months, 9 months, 12 months out? For a lot of the simple math, we use gradient boost tree models. That's a very common model to use for such lifetime value. But what's really important here, and I think where we did a lot of heavy lifting, was the feature engineering, where we really had to log a lot of the data, we had to join a lot of the data, and then score based on 100+ features that we got from our riders and drivers. But to actually come up with the prediction, you will see now ML has become a service, and you can find a lot of open source libraries out here that can help you predict some of the metrics, your objective function that you're optimizing for. And this will mean a lot to marketers specifically, is that whenever you predict LTV, you want to know what is your benchmark for your LTV. When does that lifetime value actually become profitable to you? When are you getting return on your ad spend? And now this is just profit. We have benchmarks per region, per channel, and we try to make sure that all cohorts of users reach a specific LTV benchmark. If they do not, then there are a lot of other tactics and levers we have down below in the funnel by which we are able to engage our users through push notifications, through retargeting, to make sure that we can bring their LTV above the pink line there. Okay, great. At this point, I'll hand it over to Patrick to sort of talk about the next 2 parts. Thank you.
Yeah, I like how the engineering manager explains a problem space, and then I have to go into technical details. That's really fair. For a product manager. Okay, so I'm going to go into how we allocate budget and why this is a problem, why this is a more complex problem than anything that Ajay and I have ever done, and how we actually then go allocate bids and automate the bids into our various advertising platforms. So on the budget allocation side, we treat it as a stochastic optimization problem. We use Monte Carlo Markov chains. And if you think about a marketplace and the dynamics of a marketplace, there is an optimal ratio of supply and demand. So we'll call that the market equilibrium. And based on where the loss exists in terms of the equilibrium, so if we're under demand or under supply, then we correspondingly value demand or supply greater. So for instance, in a market like San Francisco, where we just don't have enough drivers, we're never going to have enough drivers, there's always going to be more demand for drivers than there is on the passenger side in San Francisco. The amount that we're willing to pay for an incremental driver is substantially more than, let's say, a market like Miami, which is a relatively drawn out sort of physical landscape of a city, and we have a lot more demand to be drivers than actual requests for rides. So based on the fact that we've got about 350 unique marketplaces and each one has their own distinct market equilibrium, and the fact that we can influence rides today, but it takes about 18 to 20 days to generate a new driver, we have a really difficult problem to solve in that we have to forecast future utilization or market balance. We have to forecast conversion rates throughout the entire conversion funnel relative to each individual advertising channel. And then we have to forecast the likelihood for rides to be relatively static for events such as a Giants game, etc. So this was a relatively hard problem. It was dependent upon forecasting. And the way that we attempted to solve this problem was say, okay, well, let's use cost curves. So it's effectively try to draw a curve where the LTV, or effective lifetime value, that we would assign to a driver in a corresponding market or rider, let's map that to the optimal amount of spend based on what the needs of the marketplace demand. So again, in the San Francisco example, we want to pay more for a driver. So what we're doing is on every single day, on a daily basis, we are attempting to sample a curve of effective LTV relative to spend, or rather, the propensity or likelihood for a volume of activations to be generated at a certain volume of spend. So what we do is we try to draw these cost curves. We attempt to perturb these curves to attempt to find the actual slope of a curve, and that is done on a per ad or per channel basis, so that we have a good understanding of what are the diminishing returns that we can expect by attempting to spend more on a single ad, on a channel, in a given region for drivers and riders, etc. So in terms of how this works and what the actual business operation looks like, we have our business targets, or effectively given some utilization forecast, the equilibrium forecast, let's say. Given the market balance, we assign a dollar figure on the rider and driver side. And then given the existing atoms, or sorry, that's the term we use internally, the existing ads or channels that we have available to perturb. So let's say adjusting the budget of a Google AdWords campaign, a Facebook campaign, an Indeed campaign, based on the fact that we have all these channels available to perturb, we attempt to explore what the actual optimal relationship is of spend to volume of activations. And then we adjust the budgets accordingly. And that's where the budget allocator comes in that I just described. And then based on the leads that start to come in and the attributes of those leads, so demographic information, how quickly they traverse through the funnel, all of the features that Ajay just went through, based on those attributes, we attempt to predict the likelihood of this cohort of people to then activate in the future to solve some problem that we predict to happen in the future, right? So if we know that we have drivers 20 days from now, we can forecast that with a relative degree of confidence, and we can evaluate all of the leads that have come into the platform against the LTV model that we've built to determine how effectively those leads are going to satisfy the problem that we've detected in the marketplace. So that's the budget allocator. And I'm going to talk about the bidder. So bidders really just translate what the budget allocator wants to do into bids. So the budget allocator says, I want to get this many activations in San Francisco for $10,000. I want to get 5 activations for $10,000. Hey, bidders, go do something with that. And each of our channels, this actually is a bit different. So in Facebook, we use cost per conversion, and we actually set a cost per conversion target at the lead level. In Google, I believe we do this at the background check level, and we're actually sending Google rides and bookings data and actual some driver data that informs value, so that we can help train the Google bidding models to basically bid effectively for us. In job boards, so Indeed is a job boards partner, we just set a flat CPC and CPA bid, cost per lead bid. So basically, based on the unique conversion rates and, let's say, bidding operations available in each of these channels, we have to then translate this spend allocated decision from the budget allocator into each of these bidders such that we satisfy the optimal cost per activation target. So if you were to build this for any other platform, for any other problem space, where we started and where I would recommend starting, the first stage was just heuristics or rules-based approaches. So assigning a value per conversion and assuming some fixed constant of conversion rates for the funnel. The next stage, and currently where we're at for many of our bidders, is simple learned approaches using a linear regression and basically attempting to plot a bid to biddable features. So how much would you bid certain times of day, days of week, the fact that someone's on X platform or Y platform, or that your bids are on Facebook newsfeed as opposed to Facebook Messenger. Basically every single dimension that is biddable against, you can actually learn and parameterize. And finally, stage 3 is effectively how our spend allocator works, which is basically treating this as sort of an exploratory problem where you attempt to bid up and down and attempt to find the sort of optimal relationship of spend to volume such that you can maximize efficiency. So that's how bidding works for us, and that's how the relationship between the LTV forecaster, the spend allocator, and the actual bidders executes into the symphony of marketing automation at Lyft. And in terms of how well it's been working, well, it's been working pretty well. I'm not going to say that a lot of this gain, a 16-point percentage improvement to sales and marketing as a percentage of revenue, is driven by the platform. A lot of it is driven by seasonality, but there was a lot of efficiency to be had here. We had, I think, 50,000 to 100,000 unique biddable units in the platform. And that's something that marketers, even really, really savvy growth engineers, can't handle by themselves. This needs to be an always-on optimization platform. You can't be building Excel sheets, evaluating the bids and cost efficiencies of 50,000 campaigns on a daily basis. It's just, it's untenable. So that is, yeah, that's Symphony. I think I ran a bit hot there, but that's the platform. I'm done.